In him we are also ordained and have an inheritance, being predestined according to the purpose of him. Okay, let's start right there. So the first thing about knowing God's will is I have to find out my purpose. The number one question, what am I doing here? What is my purpose here? So the first way you find God's will is you have to discover the things that have been already put inside of you. You already know this. No two people are alike. Even we can't even agree on music. You know, I love jazz. Let me ask you, how many of you love classical music? All right? How many of you do not care for classical music? How many of you love country music? All right? How many of you do not care for country music? How many of you like jazz music? And everybody raise their hand. How many of you do not care for jazz? That's my favorite. How many of you do not care for jazz? See, some of you don't care for jazz music. And how many of you prefer Southern gospel over contemporary courses? All right? About 5 of you. How many of you prefer, I'm just joking there. How many of you prefer contemporary courses over Southern gospel? See, we can't agree on that. So who's right? Well, no one's wrong. We're just choosing different ways to get to God. No one is wrong in those choices. God made us unique and different. So when my wife was 3 years old, she was adopted. Her birth mother was 14 years old and gave birth to her at a clinic in Panama City, Florida. And so my wife was adopted out to a family there in Florida. And they noticed, they attended an Assembly of God church, and they noticed that Faith, when she was 3 years old, was coming home and playing the piano with one finger, and she was actually playing the songs that she heard in church, and she was a 3-year-old. Now, she had a toy piano, it wasn't a real piano, and she was actually taking one finger and playing the melody of those songs at the age of 3. By the time she was 4, on a toy piano, she had already added in chords with her left hand and was making harmony notes. And her family realized, oh my goodness, now they don't know about her background. They don't know anything about her birth parents at all. There's no information there at all about them. So where did this come from? Well, I can tell you, I wrote a little book years ago that I dedicated to my wife and all orphans. And I actually say in the book that it doesn't matter where you come from, God got there first, and the DNA of God surpasses all other DNA in your life. And so that's what you're discovering. What did God put in me? Well, by the time Faith was 5, she was playing the piano on a real piano, and they had moved then to a small town in Georgia, and by the time she was 8 years old, she was the pianist in her local church, and she couldn't even reach the pedals. She was sitting on songbooks, and you couldn't sit on a phone book in that town because it was about that thick. So there was no phone book to sit on. It was songbooks, and there's plenty of those, I promise you. And she sat on songbooks to reach the piano keys and played at the age of 8. She was their only pianist in the church, and she did that for her whole life. It's because she discovered part of God's plan in me is this gift that he put in me. Now, we have a granddaughter, Brooklyn, and Brooklyn actually, we don't know if she got it from the Lord or from both or from her Nana, because Brooklyn can hear a song one time and sing every word of it back to you. We've never seen anyone with quite a musical gift like that. She can't do it to a poem. She can't do it to reading. She can only do it to music. But she can even pause at the right time, and she gets her hand going and her rhythm going, and she can hear any song. It doesn't matter what it is. She can hear it one time, and she can actually sing it back to you in perfect pitch. And she's 11 years old. And so we realize that we're already seeing, you don't have to tell me part of God's plan for Brooklyn, because I already know it's involved in music, because she discovered something that was there. Okay, so I have a kind of a slight musical gift. Mine's not extraordinary like theirs is. Mine is just kind of a mediocre musical gift. So that wasn't God's whole plan for me. But I have a big mouth, and that was God's plan for me. And my mother tells the story of the day I was born. I was born dead. The cord was wrapped around my neck, and they laid me up on the shelf in a little metal tray, and told my whole family that I didn't survive. I laid there for 30 minutes. 30 minutes as a dead little baby, and they had already gone out and told everyone in the waiting room the baby didn't survive. My mom says that no one did anything. All of a sudden, I just opened my mouth and screamed, and she said, and he hasn't shut it since. That's her story. That's her story. So mom will tell you that was my gift. Well, you know what? It's something I have been doing my whole life. I've been speaking up. I've been preaching the gospel. And anytime there's a voice that's needed, whatever that voice is, I give it to the Lord. That was part of me discovering God's will for my life.
Thank you so much for supporting our ministry. If this has blessed you, please say a prayer for us. And if you would like to give, we have 4 ways that you can do that. You can give online at bryancutshall.com, or if you're a PayPal user, just PayPal us at Church Trainer. Or you can also give through the mail at P.O. Box 267, Georgetown, Tennessee 37336. Or if you're a Venmo user, you can Venmo us also at Church Trainer. Thank you, and God bless you, and may the Lord multiply your seed. Now back to Hope in the Word.
Can you write? Can you cook? Do you like to work with your hands? Do you like tools? Are you well organized? All of that is God's plan for your life. Some people absolutely hate administrative work. I'm one of those weird people that love it. I think administrative work is fun. Some people think it's excruciating, but it's because it's part of God's plan. God knew that He had to put that gift in me and for me to discover it so that I could do all the things that He's asked me to do. So finding that purpose. So let me ask you some questions if you're trying to discover God's will for your life. First of all, what are your passions? What are those things that get you excited when you do it and you just can't wait to do it again? That's your passions. For some people, that is singing. For some people, that's poetry. For some people, that's serving. For some people, that's witnessing. Whatever that is, God's will for your life is locked and tied to your passions. Another thing that it's tied to is your gifts. Just like Faith found the musical gift, I found the loud mouth gift, and other gifts as well to go along with that. I found those gifts, and those gifts become my calling. Those gifts become God's will for my life. And so there's other things. Here's another thing. What makes you angry? Whatever makes you angry is part of your assignment. You're supposed to fix that. Your part of your assignment is those things that make you angry. You're supposed to change that. Now, some people are angry because they went through something. Use that for good. Don't give the devil credit for that the rest of your life. Turn it around and slap it in his face. Turn around and say, what you meant for harm, God? You put me in the pit, but God's taken me to the palace. Turn around. You don't have to live your whole life stuck in a prison of abuse the rest of your life. No, that might have happened then, but when you get free, you turn around and use it against him, because whatever makes you angry is part of your assignment. Some of the greatest ministries in the world have come from people who started out with a problem that God fixed. Oral Roberts was dying of a sickness when God healed him and started a healing ministry. You know who else was dying of the same sickness across the sea? Paul Youngie Cho was dying of the same sickness and went to a tent revival and got healed and built the largest church in the world as a result of that. It's because the things that happened to them, they turned it around and turned it into a force for fulfilling God's will. So whatever makes you angry, and then whatever makes you feel fulfilled. Okay, let me go back to that passage one more time in Ephesians, and let me show you the last part of that. So the first part of it is discovering your purpose, and that's something you discover. All of you need to discover that. What is it about you that makes you unique? What is it that unlocks your passions? What are you angry about? All of that is something that God is using to bring you into destiny. And here's the next part of that. According to the counsel of His will. Okay, now that phrase might confuse a few people. What do you mean the counsel of His will? Is God getting counsel? No, God doesn't need counsel. God is counseling you. So whether you know it or not, you do have a counselor. And if any of you have ever been to counseling before, you know how counseling works. A counselor's job is to ask the right questions. They listen to you. The counselor does very little talking. You do most of the talking. Because the counselor is trying to help you think things through a different way by asking you the right questions. And when you answer those questions, it helps you to rethink your life in a different way and find closure. And that's what counseling does. Well, that is what God is doing. God is constantly putting questions in front of you. Any of you have questions from God that you can't answer yet? That means you're on a journey. God is saying, I want you to do this. If you've ever been given an assignment that is bigger than you, welcome to the ministry. That's what the ministry looks like. God is always asking you to do things that you feel unqualified to do. It's because he's counseling you. He's intriguing you. He keeps probing you with questions, because every time he puts a question mark in your life, you start answering that question and you find his will. So the will of God is according to purpose, and it's according to the counsel of his will.